Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to look at the other side of the community here for a little bit. But one thing I want to follow up from the last couple of panels, first of all, wow, thank you all for supporting today and being so open and honest on those panels. That was absolutely awesome and very informative. But to the political science major intel analyst, yeah, so you're not here to I'm not here to talk about myself or anything. The only thing I will say is I am on the National Space Council Users Advisory Group, and I'm listening. Yeah. No, so this is a big part of why we're doing this today is in that role. I chair the STEM education and the outreach subcommittee, and I also support General Lyles on the National Security Subcommittee. So this is a big part of what was driving what we wanted to do today and tee up this discussion today on that intersection between the two. So I'm very much listening and very interested in this. Okay, so one thing that we always try to foot stomp now with changing the culture of the space community and the space industry and creating the Space Force is that space isn't special. We should be just like all the other domains, right? But I'm going to start this by saying there's one critical reason where space is special, and that's because our commercial partners and our commercial industry, because of Kepler, they are in the theater with us all the time, right? So in the craft examples, you may have the airliner take the troops to Germany, and then it's C-130s that take them into the theater. We're all operating in LEO, MEO, GEO together, right? So it's a different level of operational connectivity between the actual bespoke military systems and our commercial participants. So in that way, there's already kind of an inherently different relationship across this community, and that's what we'll flesh out here a little bit with this panel. So space is special when it comes to astrodynamics, and I'll draw the line there. Okay, so this is going to be a really interesting panel with a kind of go back with some of our earlier conversations. So the first person I want to introduce, and I'll introduce them very briefly, but really to point out what is their superhuman, what is their superpower as to why they're on this panel, and give them a couple minutes for some opening remarks. So the first I want to start with is Mr. John Reed from ULA. He is, I love it that it's on his business card and everything. He is ULA's chief rocket scientist, which is kind of awesome. So in this role, he manages the Technical Fellows program at ULA and is focused on a wide variety of initiatives, from launch vehicle reuse to upper stage enhancements, trajectory planning, and defining the next generation capabilities to creating a culture of innovation within ULA. A longtime member of AAS, AIAA, actively engaged in a variety of AIAA task forces, Ascend, and the AAS GNC conference. So yeah, guidance nerds are kind of their own clique. So, but part of his superpower, why he's here, John is a longtime participant as a commercial cell member for the Schriever War Games. So a big part of this is a long event, where industry and the war planners and the war fighters and the coalition partners all really intersect. And a big part of why, and I've participated in the game too, a big part of why commercial players play and a big part of why we're there is to teach the Guardians and the Airmen and our international partners, what do we do? Why are we here? What are we really capable of? What can commercial do in these elevated times of crisis and conflict? So he's actually a rocket scientist. He has his bachelor's is in aeroastro and a master's of computer science from the University of Colorado. So John, you've got the floor first.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mandy. I guess just a couple thoughts to begin with. One, I kind of live in the future, and so I spend a lot of my time thinking about what's going to be going on 10 years from now. What do different people need? I'm kind of fond of wearing this pin that I got from NASA. I was just at a global conference on space for climate change. And in working the Schriever game and in talking at Space Symposium, one of the things I notice is change is coming and it's hitting everyone. And today we don't really know what the capabilities that we need in space will be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. Agility in process is going to be the key to that. The caution that I want to make sure you all walk away with is change is good, but it comes with risk. Part of my background is Titan IV. And so we learned a lot of different ways that you can make a rocket not go to space. The thing that I took away from that was we have to understand why we did it the way we did it before and why that's not okay going forward. I think we all recognize the threat, the pace, the need for innovation is very different. But there's challenges in then changing what you do today into what you're going to do tomorrow. So look forward to the conversation around that.
Awesome. So the next person I'll introduce on the panel is Miss Erin Bodie from the NRO. So she's actually a physicist, so BS in physics from the University of Oklahoma and an MPS in geospatial services from Northeastern University. That sounds just super cool. So currently she is in NRO AS&T as a program manager there, steering the next generation system development. She's led research laboratories, staff, fielding capability, everything from all the .mil PF training, ConOps, the culture modifications required to get new intelligence platforms out into the field. She spent a lot of time standing up the IC Commercial Space Council, which is a 2-year-old thing now, to really look at this same intersection of how can the commercial space services and products be further integrated into our actual day-to-day missions. And this includes policy, strategy, regulation, and legislation. She's worked through the seismic culture shifts, as she even put it, that comes from fielding new technology and operations into IC systems, and now with her role there at the NRO, she's one of the ones pushing it. Her other job is she is a reservist in the Air Force, supporting operations in a space ops squadron. So she's doing this on both sides of the fence, both as an Air Force satellite operator and then at the NRO. So long time in the intelligence community, from being an intel analyst to actually being in operational units, and she's just an all-around badass. So I'll start, and I think one thing that I really like her here to bring in the IC perspective with us as well. So Erin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mandy. That was a very generous introduction. And can I get that on my card?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I don't have cards yet, so that's what I'm going to put. It's still not quite a chief rocket scientist, but it's close. So badass is good. So my unique perspective is where I intersect between commercial space enterprise, the military operators, and the intelligence community, because I have my feet in all three. I did a couple years in industry as a technical advisor to the government, and it's different on every side, and there are different nuances and frustrations you have to deal with, but there are also different strengths and best practices that we can harness from one another. And something I'd like to bring to bear in this discussion today is what the total force can do to integrate commercial and the Guardians together. And because your total force, your reserve force, even though we don't have a Space Force Reserve, you have Air Force Reserve, you have Army, and you have Navy, and we use all of them in support of the Space Force. And what that brings you when you have those reservists, when they go home, I'll give you the example just from the folks in my branch alone, not my branch of service, but just my little office. We have a lawyer, we have a CEO of a space startup, we have me, and I build space systems for the National Reconnaissance Office, so I'm an acquisitions officer. I build the next thing. And then we also have a couple of other folks that do really novel things across the regular commercial space enterprise, building those novel capabilities that I am buying at my day job. And what we bring when we come in on reserve duty is the insight, the best practices of everything that's going on in the outside world. And we have the same readiness standards as everyone else in uniform. And we show up and plug and play it, and we have all that extra expertise. And so part of what I would like to bring to that discussion today and learn from others and what they think we should do is that specific piece. And that goes across the intelligence community and the regular space enterprise.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Okay, next on our panel, we have Mr. Brian Bone. He is the head of strategy from Loft Orbital, their federal division here in Colorado. Let's see. So he's got over 25 years supporting national security space domain. He was an Air Force space acquirer and operator, including the 21st Space Wing Space Control Vault, 3rd SES as a space operator and director of mission assurance, and experience at both the Nevada and space test and training ranges. So he's been in industry for about 10 years, supporting ground segment and space segment systems engineering, architecting, and business development. And he has a BS. I just like looking at where people went to school. It's fun. So he has a BS in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Illinois and a master's of engineering and systems engineering from Johns Hopkins. So over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Mandy. It's always an honor to be invited to sit on a panel and be able to, especially something like this, because I love talking and hearing from everyone who kind of came after me, and especially I'm super jealous that you guys get to be part of the Space Force. Quite frankly, I like many of you, like we heard in the last panel, I started off my life wanting to be an astronaut. I was 4 years old, I think. I told my mom I wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm not there yet. I haven't given that up yet, but I went to space camp, did the whole thing, and I had so much fun, and I couldn't stop doing it, so I wanted to keep doing it on the industry side. And so I want to thank all of you who are wearing the uniform today. You made two choices that are really important for our country. One is you chose to wear a uniform. Number two, many of you chose, some of you got some help from above, but many of you chose also to start a brand new service. Those are really important things. Don't ever let that go. Don't ever minimize that. Those two choices being put together. So, what I'm as a member of industry in sort of the sexy new startup side of industry, right, on the space industry, and the new hotness that's going on the commercial side. It's interesting to be able to compare what you all are experiencing and hearing your experiences with what we see and what we're experiencing on the space startup side. I think there are a lot of parallels to be drawn there, and so very interested, of course, also to hear what you want from us on this side. How do we help you establish this new culture? What's our role in that? Versus, where does that glass need to be broken, and where's the baggage that needs to be dropped? Frankly, from the old way, from the Air Force side of doing business, which I lived quite a bit of. So thanks, Mandy, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Okay, and then we heard from him this morning, so I won't belabor the introduction, but Major General Leonard. So let's see. So here's a leader that has 3,000 hours of F-16 time. He's been forward. He understands the role of space in the actual tip of the spear applications before he goes to SpaceCom to help really stand up this command. So his superpower as to why he's on the panel here. So he's clearly been built and been a part of many of different teams and cultures across these different domains and across these different mission areas. So his perspective here and how from the SpaceCom perspective as we're standing up, what is this warfighter ethos? How do we bring our commercial participants and industry to bear? So sir, the floor is yours.
All right. First of all, it's an honor to be on a panel with everybody. I've never been on a panel with a badass or a rocket scientist or a space startup so pretty cool. I would just offer kind of three things. One is our lead is in jeopardy. Two, we're all in the weapons engagement zone, either because we're in similar orbits or because we no longer have two big oceans because of the ubiquitousness of the threat, both cyber, space, and hypersonics and speed. And so even our homes, we're in this together. And then in a near-peer fight, we have to be effective and efficient, and we have to bring everybody to bear on the problem set, and it all counts. And so I'm very excited for this panel. Thank you, Mandy.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So kind of why we're having this panel, and one area of significant movement interest is talking about commercial integration. As the Space Force starts procuring more commercial services or commercially based products, and we explore the deeper roles of where commercial services fit into these traditional space missions, what does that mean for the role of the Guardian? What are your thoughts on what the Guardian of today and in the future needs to be? Is it flying satellites? And I always use that term since we fly satellites. Or is it something else? Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll go first. A lot of this new technology that's going to be fielded by the commercial space enterprise, and maybe even, if I'm lucky, if I have any success, maybe I'll do it too, is going to be more automated. And so as space is becoming more proliferated, you have a limitation. You can't do one-on-one commanding anymore because you're going to have too many objects, and we just can't get any more people than we already have. The workforce, we have what we have. And there's also a little bit of physics involved. You only have so many apertures on the ground to talk to the satellites. There's only so much electromagnetic spectrum to communicate in. And so what we're going to have to do is to start automating the systems a little more. And what that's going to do is change the culture. Whether you're a commercial operator or a guardian, it's going to change how we interact with our space systems. And so that proliferation is going to affect our people and how we employ them. And that automation is going to take care of the what and the how on behalf of us. So that AI and ML is going to take a lot of the nitnoid detail monotony out of your day. And what's going to allow you to do as an operator is focus on the why and really focus on the actual impact and the effects that you are seeking to achieve with your system. And I believe that'll enable, whether you're a commercial operator or a guardian, for you to take your skills to the next level and really focus on the art of spaceborne operations. And I really look forward to seeing some Red Baron stories when I'm old and retired from the next generation. So when my dream in the commissary, when I'm dragging my oxygen tank around, is to hear the wonderful Red Baron stories about what you guys are doing. So I hope that is going to be the change for the role of the Guardian, and as we come up with those new commercial space systems, is to take the implementation of how we're operating in space to the next level.
If I'll pile on that. I think I come at it from a slightly different perspective because I'm a space owner-operator. We build and operate the rockets to provide space access for the force. And so I think part of where I see things changing is through the digital force that we're talking about having in model-based systems, digital transformation. Part of the challenge we have ahead of us is figuring out what is the exact data set you need represented with the digital environment that you're accessing. I could build a model that would give you highest fidelity possible. It would take about 5 years to execute a single simulation. That's not what you need. On the other hand, we're at the War Game talking about how do we integrate everybody different assets and realizing the government isn't getting there quick enough and deciding, you know what, we could go solve this on our own. Let's go create a consortium that's going to go figure out space traffic integration and keep it very simple, succinct, and approach the problem that way. Obviously, it's not my job to go solve the problem, but I'm just saying there's a lot of opportunity space for the force to go explore. And so you get to help decide what it is you need and what data products provide you the necessary input to make the decisions that you have to make to execute the role you have to do. So don't be afraid of taking on that leadership role in terms of figuring out what is it that you need to know to be able to effectively execute decisions. And more importantly, what does your boss need to know? Part of how I got the role I have is because at every step in my career, it's been what is not just my boss, but what does my boss's boss need to know in order for them to be successful, because that's my job, right? And now I get to play CEO in a war game and figure out what's Elon going to tweet, what's Tory going to Reddit, and how does that impact the broader community. And so be creative and think about what those options are, and don't be afraid to share your thoughts across your peers, your leaders, because that's how you shape the environment that we're all going to be operating in.
Awesome. So we've had some discussion today in terms of how the Space Force is a nascent, still young service. So it's kind of as close as we can get to a startup in terms of a military service. So let's talk to the startups. What do you think the Space Force can learn from the startup community and from that part of the ecosystem that we get to play in our day jobs?
Yeah, I was thinking about the parallels, listening especially to the young folks who are the new Guardians, the younger Guardians who are up here. One of the things that in the startup world, when you're in the first few years of your existence, you have to embrace chaos. If I say the word chaos, a lot of you are thinking anarchy, as in there's a complete lack of disorder. The word chaos actually means an abyss, like a complete lack of any form or function, right? So it's the unknown is what it really means. And so you are forming the vision. You are deciding where you're going to go, and everybody is a part of that. Everybody has to chip into that. You have to thrive in that kind of environment. Startups who cannot thrive in that environment don't survive. And failure for you all as a service is not an option. the Space Force should never be dissolved, in my opinion. So, second part of that, I think, is the idea that no job too small. You're a small service. You're growing, so you're all contributing. But some other things to be aware of are what we call on the startup side is founder's hubris. So what that means is there's always a founder. There's someone who's got the idea. They've got the vision. But that vision, that idea, that concept is going to grow bigger than you are, bigger than you can handle very quickly. And so you have to be able to let go. You have to be able to let go to the people who are coming behind you, to the people you're bringing in. And so that's the young folks who are the younger guardians who are out there. You all have the ideas. Don't take no for an answer. That's where you really need to challenge the leadership, and the leadership does say, and it's kind of why I asked earlier, like what rules need to be broken. When those leaders say no because, don't let that go. That's harder on the startup side than I think it is. There's a culture in the military of, everybody's time is kind of limited. People are going to move. In the startup world, you don't necessarily have that. So there's a little bit bigger challenge on our side to go deal with that. I think those are maybe some key lessons learned from us, parallels that I see between a startup service and a startup company.
I think one thing I'd like to pull on a little bit is a lot of the different startups have had different cultures. My impression is a lot of that culture is set by the initial set of here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, the processes that get put in place by that founder. I'd be curious if you think that's, because in my experience, process begets culture, and then culture eats strategy. So if you don't get that right at the beginning, it creates a huge hurdle to be effective.
I would agree. What I would say is that what's right in the first 3 years of a company may not be right in the following year after that, and then the 5 more after that. So same thing on the service side, right? What processes work and what you have to do to get the job done early. Don't assume that that's the way it's got to be forever.
Yeah, it goes back to that operational flexibility or agility.
Yeah, 100%.
So kind of on that point of the operational flexibility, it's come up a little bit today too, but we have to fight like we train, right? This has come up a couple of times. Oh, you brought it up with landing on the taxiway, that we have to actually practice this before we can do it in a time of war. So we're hearing some of the same rhetoric in terms of the commercial space integration of okay, we know that when the balloon goes up, we're going to really use this stuff. Like, okay, well, when are we going to practice with it, right? And how do we start having more of these exercises and opportunities to actually experiment with the other elements in the toolkit? So I'd be curious to get your thoughts for those that have participated in Schriever. What do you think was working or not working? Where do you think in this more DevSecOps, faster pace of technological change could we do more of? And I'd love to get General Leonard's perspective on this too from the command side on how would you like to integrate with commercial partners in some more creative ways that maybe we haven't thought about.
Yeah, I can start. So first, intent and purpose, like I talked about, bringing everybody to the fight is key. So in many ways, based on the Chinese stated way that they are going to go to war, they're going to try to win without fighting. And they're going to try to make sure that they don't raise the ire of the United States. It's their counter-intervention strategy, if you will. And they're going to go first in the information superiority and then space superiority. And what I worry about is that we're not going to realize that they've already won before they've won. And so when I think about one of the great advantages we get with partnering with the full team, international, IC, commercial, is that we can thicken our sensor network. And we can thicken our capabilities, the redundancy, resiliency piece. But if we don't practice those things, and if we don't state that out loud, sort of the purpose of our teaming, then we're never going to get there. And so I think we have to sort of acknowledge that out loud, that everyone's a sensor, but you have to be able to communicate. You have to have a common operational picture. We have to break through what I call multi-bilateralism, proprietary information and concerns there. But I think we can work through that. And then we need to understand what's important to be communicated and how and at what speed, and then to be able to integrate across many different layers of security and proprietary information, which I think is super difficult. But you're not going to get there overnight. You're not going to be able to leap right into a fully coordinated picture where everybody's passing information and working well together. And so as I mentioned before, I think working that in bite-sized chunks, trying to do that in a bilateral level, maybe with one corporation, one company, one constellation, and then growing that into multiple different areas of what the commercial brings, as well as international partners. And so I would work at it piecemeal, but we have to get going. We can't just keep talking about it. We have the commercial integration cell out at CSPOC underneath CIFSIC, and that's helping out with just being able to put some of their operators on the floor and then be able to pass information. We're looking to get a little bit better at that in terms of command and controlling. And then there's an understanding, I think, on the military side that is kind of brought up in the first question, what can Guardians do? You need to be able to understand that entire network. And so that's going to take a lot of asking a lot of questions and then exercising it, and you'll find out what you don't know. But super important if we're going to actually understand what the Chinese are about before we actually lose the fight, and then to be able to have the resiliency and capability, efficiency, and effectiveness to win.
Yeah, I guess back to the question on Schriever and what we were able to do, what worked well. I think it was very interesting, the difference between this last game and the one before. When you go to different groups of international partners, it creates a very different security environment that we're operating in. I would say we were very effective at communicating out what could be done, what the next steps should be for both 10 years in the future as well as when we walked out of there. And I guess to your point, I think a number of us have taken the initiative to go say, okay, how do we go make some of these things move forward now? One of the things I'm working with Aerospace Corporation on is a model-based systems environment, and what are the conditions that we have to have, the systems we have to have, the problems we need to tackle today for an integrated mission success environment. To your point as well, and to the experience from the game, we actually have a very similar problem on the industry side when you think trade secrets and proprietary information and public access information to top secret, secret, and what we can share with anybody. And I think part of the challenge that we're trying to figure out, I was actually stimulated listening to an audio file of the indictment charges, sad to say, that there ought to be automated ways where you could identify what is the thing that creates the grave or very grave risk to the community. Similar, what is that? And it's part of the challenge I have. One of my jobs is also intellectual property and identifying what are trade secret items that we need to make sure we're protecting and kind of keeping the Coca-Cola sauce locked away kind of thing. The challenge that I always have is getting the people that have created a new idea to think through what is the nugget that really matters. It is not the design. It's not pictures of the rocket on the pad. Those are publicly accessible. It can't be trade secret. And I would argue it can't be classified if I can take a picture of it, right? And so we've got to figure out what is it I have to protect and be able to segregate that from the rest of the systems that we're operating. And so that will give us the flexibility to then create the lower classification level products that get shared that enable all of us to operate as a community.
Okay, so I think the general's going to probably want to get up here soon. So I'm going to go with a rapid fire round. I'm going to use your question from earlier, Brian. So what rule do you want to break?
Stop thinking about buying systems as all or nothing. Is it commercial or is it not commercial? There's way better ways to think about that. So that's a rule. It's just a way of thinking about how things are bought. You as Guardians know how systems are operated. Come and tell us how you need it done. We can help you out there.
Aaron?
Checklists. There are so many times when we want to make a reconfiguration or make a change, and we can't because we don't have a checklist or that's not on the checklist. And when the balloon goes up and it's time to really make a difference and make decisive decisions, yes, the best kind, we will have to be able to be nimble and to have freedom to make the best decisions. And that involves risk. But relying on that checklist that takes hours to execute is also risky. And I sit shoulder to shoulder with my colleagues who are commercial operators, and I know that they feel the same way. And that's the rule I would break. Checklists.
Checklists. Okay.
I'm going to make my answer long. So part of our corporate culture is mission success. And the way we define that is by the mission that we're flying. So your successful deployment activation means I was successful in my service. I bring that up because the thing I would push back on is if you're buying a service, you didn't buy the rocket. And I would say this is written large. For anything that you're trying to buy as a service, you need to leave the flexibility for the market to evolve the systems that they employ to provide the service, to continue that evolution and integration and infusion of technology and innovation to give you better services year on year on year. And if the current culture has always been, it's my rocket, it's my mission, so nobody else can do anything else with it, and that is the minimum risk for that specific application, but it's not the right risk level for the force. And we need to think about how do we get the right risk balance for the force writ large.
So I share the same building with Spock, so I have two. And my first one is, this is the way we've always done it. And my second one is, only folks in uniform are fighting.
Yeah, here, I'll tag on to that. I'll tell you right now, economic, talked about DIME earlier, right? The economic instrument of national power is under attack right now. We are under attack right now. You all are right there in front of defending it. So we see it every day. You guys are planning for a fight in 2026. We're fighting it right now. And it's not because someone wants to steal our technology to make theirs better. It's because they want to erode our economic instrument of national power to the point where we can't fight or don't have the will to fight in the future.
On that happy note, yeah. But no, thank you all. But I think the commercial integration is something that's definitely thematic, critical, important, timely. And one thing that I know is unique in a weapon that we have in that fight that is happening is our innovation ecosystem. Right. So I think the real charter to all of us in our day jobs is how do we get leverage the best out of our innovative ecosystem, because we can out innovate them any day of the week. So how are we going to tap into that? So thank you all for an abbreviated panel, but fun nonetheless. But no, we'll transition to our last keynote speaker. But thank you all.